the A.D.D show, where we're not always right, but we're never wrong. As always, I'm Mark.
And I'm Hans, and welcome back, everybody. It has been exactly a week, pretty much, since you've heard from us last, right? We actually recorded last week, so we're back-to-back weeks, so...
No, we didn't record last week.
Yeah, we did. We had an
Did we?
We recorded Monday. That's why it felt so long. But we did have one last week.
All right.
So this is kind of going back into our part 2 episode towards the end of free agency now. I say towards the end. The big names are falling, and now we're getting left with the trades that happen late, the what we like to call the straggler players, the ones that are still there just waiting for. They waited for that big deal, then they didn't get the deal. But today we actually have a guest who's never been on the show before. So I would like everybody to, we're going to introduce him. He's a good friend of mine, and his name is Joey. So go ahead and introduce yourself, bud.
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for having me on this episode of the podcast. I'm super stoked to join you guys. I checked in on the episode last week, and I'm super pumped to be here. So since I'm new, I'll just introduce myself a little bit. My name is Joey. I'm 27, so I'm around Christian's age here. I'm a big Philadelphia sports fan, so I'm going to be bringing you all a Philly perspective on things, which not a lot of people really want to hear. So I'm sure it'll be fun.
Well, the reason why I talked to Mark about when I first met you, I was like, the reason why is because we've had him as the Bengals, we've had me as Dallas, we've had DC, we had Brandon a long time ago, 2 seasons ago when we first started with the Ravens, but we've never had an Eagles fan on the show. So I think it's about time we have one, because every week we're like, well, what about Jalen Hurts, or what about this? And we'll get to that with you at the end, you know that. But we always have these questions. We're like, we need to get an Eagles fan on here, and we've had multiple attempts, and it seems like no one ever wants to show up. So we have you today, and you said you were willing to do it, so that's awesome.
Absolutely. I'm psyched to do it. I'm happy to bring you that perspective, and I'm sure I'll differ. Then Philly is split, and I'm sure we'll get into later with Jalen Hurts, but I'll give you what I got.
All right, that works. All right.
All right,
well, Mark?
so today what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about who we feel won, the top 5 teams that won free agency. And then we'll go into, say, top remaining free agents, who we think they are, everything. So on that being said, I'm going to give the guest, Joey. Joey, one, nice to finally talk to you. I've heard a lot about you. I'm sure I'll meet you soon. I'm wondering, in your opinion, who won free agency and why?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. And like I said earlier, it's a pleasure to be on here with you. I'll look forward to meeting you in person later on. But Christian gave me a heads up on the topic. I thought this was a hard one to figure out who won free agency. I have a list of about, I would say 6, and then I have a couple honorable mentions. But if I had to pick one team that I think won free agency, and I would include trades in this. So who's winning the offseason? If I had to pick one team, I'd probably say the Dolphins.
Okay. All right.
If I had to pick, I'd say them, if I'm including everything. But I'd also was debating between the Dolphins and the Rams. I think the Rams just, especially with the recent pickup of Bobby Wagner, which makes absolutely no sense how they have money to do this. But I'll go back to the Dolphins real quick. So they picked up a couple linemen to protect Tua.
Yep.
They brought in Bridgewater to give him a little competition. And just in case he gets injured, which he has an injury history, Bridgewater could step in. They got Mostert and Chase Edmonds to solidify the backfield. And then, Tyreek Hill, they brought in a number 1 wide receiver. So they're gonna be right there, like you guys were talking about last week, of how the AFC's just stacked with playoff contenders. They'll be right there in the thick of things, and I think because of that, they could have just won. They've won free agencies so far, in my opinion.
All right, who? So they're on the list. So you said you had a list about 5 or 6. So who's that list?
Sure. So I'll say 1A and 1B, Dolphins and Rams.
Okay.
Then I have the Jags. They made a couple good additions, I thought, that'll solidify their offensive line, give Trevor Lawrence some protection. Evan Ingram, I was never really high on him in New York, but, I mean, I think they can make him into a decent tight end / slot receiver option. Then next on my list, I have Cincinnati. I mean, they haven't done a whole lot, but they did what they needed. They filled in the holes that were there. They solidified the line. I know you're a Bengals fan, so
Yep.
They did that. They brought in Hayden Hurst. I think he'll replace Uzama as that tight end option. He'll be a good pickup there. And then a couple other teams I wanted to include. These probably should have been higher up on the list. Denver and Las Vegas.
Okay.
Denver getting Russell Wilson. I mean, that in itself makes them a possible playoff contender with their offense as it is already, and a decent defense. And then the Raiders getting Devontae Adams. That's the best receiver in the game right now, in my opinion. Chandler Jones, pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to rack up the sacks for them. So, yeah, that's my top list. And then I also threw in my Eagles at the bottom just because I can.
We like that. That's
All
fine.
Right. So interestingly enough, a lot of people have been saying that the Chargers won free agency also. That AFC West, the players that they added, I think by far the Broncos and the Raiders outdid the Chargers.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think they outdid the Chargers, but I think all three of those teams are almost top 5 in the entire league in free agency in a way. Does that make sense? Like, it's hard to say you're the best free agency team in your division and say you're the third and still be better than the entire NFC East. Yeah. Like that's what I'm saying when it comes to that. Like, my
feeling on the Chargers were they wanted the biggest name.
Yeah.
They didn't actually go after the biggest fit.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel on that, where with the Raiders, you lose Ruggs to a horrific incident, but you go out and you didn't really give up a lot. I mean, you gave up a lot for Adams, but you didn't really give up a lot, especially since you're a young team. And then getting Chandler Jones to be opposite Max Crosby.
Yeah.
It's Max Crosby.
They re-signed Max Crosby.
That edge there is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to be able to hold the ball. And, I'm not a fan of Russell Wilson, but that's a huge upgrade at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at Kansas City, who traded away their, best offensive player.
Yeah.
Second best offensive skill position player, if you want to say Kelsey's better. But I like that. I like that list. I feel that some people aren't giving the Bengals that credit because they, like Joey said, they didn't do a lot.
Yeah.
But what they did was exactly what they needed to do.
Yeah.
And they did. And what I liked is they didn't overspend for the name.
Yeah.
And if you tell me that they didn't give up any draft picks to get La'el Collins, who realistically is a top 5 right guard in the league. Right tackle.
Yeah.
And you sign him to a $20 million, 3-year, $20 million. For me, that's like mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. But I like that list. I feel that Tampa Bay is, there's a lot of teams that won that got better. Who's your top 5?
So my top 5, I have a list here. It's hard to do that with the phone too. So my list in no particular order, if I had to pick, but I have no particular order, is I have the Bills, Raiders, Chargers, Bengals, Miami.
Okay.
So essentially the same list he had, but he didn't have the Bills. Yep. I have the Bills and Chargers and Bengals to me is my top 3 right now. I know people Miami and the Raiders brought in 2 top wide receivers. To me, bringing in top wide receiver talent doesn't always work. I mean, it does, don't get me wrong, but I thought Hopkins was going to do better in Arizona than he has. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't always work that way.
Okay.
The other thing is, with me, the Bills did what the Bengals did, but I think the Bills did it twofold. I think they signed too deep in every position they needed. They signed over 19 free agents.
Yeah.
That didn't include the players on their team. They brought in a lot of weapons, and I think they're actually trying to go, we want to stay as the number one team, and to them, in their mind, in the AFC East. North, but they also, no, it is the East, excuse me.
Yeah.
But they also want to take a crack at seeing what the AFC West did. Miami made good moves. Again, the Bengals, I don't think completely blew free agency out of the water, but in my opinion, they did exactly what they needed to do. They literally brought in talent in every position. They didn't spend a lot of money to do it. And my honorable mentions are the Rams and the Texans. I know that's surprising, but the Texans free agency class is not that bad.
No.
They brought in a lot of dudes that I would call dudes. They finished their first 4 years with the team, and the team doesn't want to re-sign them to big money, so they do exactly what your defensive end did for the Bengals. Hendrickson. They do deals like that. They do a 1-year prove-it deal, and the Texans got a lot of 1-year prove-it. They also brought in Kyle Allen. I'm not sure that's a huge upgrade, but I think the Texans are trying to make strides in really good moves. And there's a lot of teams I think absolutely lost, but there is more teams that did really well than lost.
So I want to mention what I feel the Texans are trying to do is recoup all that draft capital that they lost.
Yep.
And all that stuff that Bill O'Brien and the old GM did that absolutely handcuffed the team.
And they have a lot of picks now too.
Yes, but they can they'll get more, because I don't think Tunsil will be on the team when the season starts. And I think they'll get even more. But I think, and it's kind of funny because we've had the conversation before the Super Bowl about the Bengals, the way the Bengals built their team and the way the Rams built their team. And so the Bengals are continuing to build their team the way they've built them. The Rams are continuing to build the team the way they want. The hell with draft picks, and we're going to just, we're going to sign these players. And, they may only have 2 good years left, but we're going to be competitive. But I like what – and it's weird because I actually, knowing Joey was coming on, I actually did look at it. I liked what the Eagles did. The Eagles didn't go after – and give up their draft picks.
No.
Like, they worked hard for these draft picks. Like, if you look at their core, they're a little old in certain positions. But with all the draft picks you have and not giving them up, I really think that's just a solid win in free agency. So having them as an honorable mention isn't bad. And then really getting Fletcher Cox back at a better deal for the team and everything. But I feel... all those teams that you guys mentioned are all there. Yep. I feel that one of the biggest losers in this whole thing is, unfortunately, and I want you to talk about it, is the Cowboys.
Yep.
You trade Cooper for a salary dump. You didn't get what you could get. Everybody knew you were going to cut him, so they weren't going to offer you anything. You have contracts that you are hard to get out from under. You let Collins go for nothing, which I know you saved a ton of money.
But we will June 10th, so yeah.
Right, the point I'm making is you're saving all this money for what?
I can't answer that.
That's
a Jara Jones question. It's because I know Joey will want to say to this is the problem I have, and we talked about it the other night. We were in the car together, and one of the issues I have with Dallas right now is like, you have all this money, but you want to commit to your guys. Now, I'll say the positives to what Mark said. The positives are we got rid of 48% of our penalties in 4 players getting rid of them. Okay, that makes sense. But you let Randy Gregory go. People are like, oh, why would you let him go? Because the money we let him go, we re-signed Van Der Esch, got James Washington, Dorrance Armstrong, and re-signed our safety Curse. We got 4 more players out of 1 deal we let go. However, to me, it's what Dallas did that is not being talked about is bringing back the guys they needed to. Lael Collins is going to suck that he left. He won't suck. It's going to suck that he left. However, when he was injured last year, we had a rookie play in the same place and was putting up better, PFF numbers at the same time. They decided to save money. Cooper, me and Joey talked about this. Cooper is a great wide receiver. However, he disappears at times. He's a ball hawk. He needs the ball all the time, but yet he has 5 to 10 drops a year. You know what I mean? And not saying drops that are counted as his, but balls he should be catching. And then you're like, oh, it's the fourth quarter. Where's Amari Cooper? And he's on the bench getting stretched out. Like, he disappears. Now, do I agree with the moves they made? No. Do I wish they got more out of Cooper in the deal? I understand it was a salary dump, but if you're dumping all this salary, what are you doing? Like, you brought in James Washington. You're in on, you talk about you're being in on.
That was like a 1-year deal, though, wasn't it?
What was?
The James Washington?
It's a 1-year deal.
1-year deal.
So you're saying you're in on, what's his name? What's the older wide receiver from the Colts?
T.Y. Hilton.
T.Y. Hilton. You're in on T.Y. Hilton. Supposedly you're in on a trade for Brandon Cooks. Okay, here's the issue. You have 14 draft picks, and you have almost $20 million in cap space. Do something. It's like that meme where you're poking with the stick. Just do.
But
you
you're
have
at
all
that.
this.
You're at that area in the draft, though. That's sort of what I call no man's land.
Yeah.
Where you're good enough to make the playoffs, but you're not good enough to get the quality player you need to plug into your system.
So I'll say this, then I'll let Joey go because I want to hear his take on that. To me, unfortunately, where I don't want to be and is what I see Dallas doing is I see Dallas moving into the Seattle 2 years after their Super Bowl run. You think you're still good enough to win a Super Bowl, which we didn't, but you're actually almost close to a rebuild. But they don't see it that way. Does that make sense? So how do you feel about that, Joey?
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with you. They have this cap space, and I mean, you've got those salary dumps, you got the cap, but you can't just let it sit there. You got to bring in some guys. I think they're going to be in on some of these receivers that are left over. I mean, you got guys like veterans available: Jarvis Landry, Julio Jones. Those are the top two I can think. Oh, Odell's still out there. I'm not saying they're going to get a guy like that, but I mean, there's guys they can spend money on.
And I know that the Houston Texans have put a 3rd-round price tag right now on Brandon Cooks, if not more. And Dallas has 5 5th-round picks. They could add one of them to that. And I think that would take away their thought process of all the fans wanting a first-round wide receiver when we have other holes that are bigger. You know what I mean?
So mention, not to cut Joey
you're good.
you off, but a name that is very intriguing because of his skill set, but unfortunately with a suspension and injury history, Will Fuller.
Yeah, Will Fuller's an interesting name.
He's just somebody that when he's on and he's there, he
reminds me of Brandon Cooks, severely underrated, and people are like, oh, Brandon Cooks is Brandon Cooks. You look at his numbers. He almost has Mike Evans numbers, and nobody sees it.
Well, our buddy Nate, if you know the show, you know Nate, but he's huge on Brandon Cooks, and he's almost turning me around on him because I feel like a guy that's been on 8 teams, always traded, but
had 1,000 yards on every single one.
Yeah, he always produces. So,
I do want to ask one more thing to Joey because we were just talking about his Eagles, so I wanted to ask this. We were in the car when the Tyreek Hill news, right? The Tyreek Hill news had broken. And I messaged you saying, why didn't Philly go in on this? Because you have 3 first-round picks. You could have offered 2 of them. And your response was what?
It's too much.
Yeah. It's too much for having 3 first-round picks that we talked about. What would you use them for?
We said it's too much. I don't want Philly to give up 2 of their 3 first-round picks. One, I would do in a heartbeat because we're most likely going to use those 3 first-round picks if we use them all in the draft for a receiver, a linebacker, and then maybe a lineman, offense or defense. I could see either, honestly. Maybe a corner. So the Eagles have too many holes to be giving up 2 firsts for one position player.
I agree.
And that's the thing. That's why I said, like, you can't really say, like, anybody they've signed or brought back. It's the staying pat.
Yeah.
It's your name. The Eagles' name has been mentioned with every single player this offseason. Yeah. Rodgers, Watson, Wilson, and
go down the list of every positional group.
And then it was, Allen Robinson, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, like you name it, Amari Cooper, name it, and they're in that discussion. And I think it's just very good. I think they have a plan.
Yeah.
And they just want to see how that goes.
Now, I have this question, which was not part of our thing, but I want to put you 2 on the spot because I can probably guess y'all's 2 answers, or especially Mark's. With all this free agency stuff going on, the lack of Dallas not getting Bobby Wagner and not getting Von Miller and being out on this and being out on that, do you think Dallas fans or even Jerry, it's like with Washington. You have your owner, the fans don't really agree with. The Dallas fans like Jerry Jones because he's a genuinely nice guy. He donates a lot of money. Seems like a nice guy. But in general, he's a terrible GM. So what I'm trying to say is, do you think Bobby Wagner didn't take the Dallas job because he was only offered $7 million? Or do you think he was offered the same amount? But do you think the star has lost its shine? Do you think players don't want to play for Dallas anymore because they're like, who are you? Are you really? Like, in players' minds, like, Jerry thinks, well, we're Jerry Jones. We're the Cowboys. You should want to be here. Do you think players are going, yeah, we don't want to be there? Like, does that make sense? Is there a luster coming off of that team right now? Like, it's just starting to rust away to free agents.
I'll let Joey go first on that. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. I think it definitely has. I mean, y'all haven't been to a conference championship in like 20 years or something like that. I mean, the star's not going to sell it anymore.
Yeah.
Players want to win, and they're going to take a better deal from a team that might be in a better position to win. Like Wagner going to the Rams. The Rams just won a Super Bowl. If it's between Dallas and the Rams, I'm going to the Rams every day.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I definitely agree. I think just trying to sell your team because you're the Dallas Cowboys, it's not going to work anymore.
I don't think it does. I think that's what Jerry is banking on. And I think we've lost so many free agents for almost 5 to 6 years now, and it hasn't worked. You can't stop draft picks from coming to us because you draft them. That's why we've been a good drafting team. But we're like, hey, you should take a few dollars less to be with us. And players are dipping.
So my philosophy is this. I don't think the star's ever going to lose its luster. Okay? Meaning they're always going to be the most talked about team at nauseum.
Yeah,
always.
It's nauseating.
Always. And because it's sort of like the Lakers, the Celtics, it sells.
Yeah.
If the Cowboys are relevant, the NFL is better. It's sort of like Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady plays in the NFL is better right now. Even though there's a lot of good young talent, blah, blah, blah. But my thing is this. Did Dallas offer a 5-year deal? Or did they offer, say, a 2-year deal? Mm-hmm. And if you're a Bobby Wagner, you don't want to be jumping 3-4 times in the next 3-4 years.
Yeah, I heard it was, from what I heard from a reporter I follow, he's not really a reporter. He's more just like a huge YouTuber, but his name is, I don't know his actual name, but his channel name is Laws Nation. He goes live almost every day, huge Dallas fan. And he said that the contract that he had heard through the grapevine, and he's been pretty accurate on everything, was 2 years, 25, 25 fully guaranteed.
Yep.
So it would have been 12 and a half a year. He got 11, and it would have been fully guaranteed both years.
But he has 5 years.
Exactly.
And so my thing is, if you're bringing in an older player that is leaving the team he's played for his whole career.
They want longevity.
They want that security. They don't want to be a prove it. I don't need to prove it. He's not coming off an injury.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say. Now, a player coming off an injury history, I'll sign that 1 year, 2 year deal, 1 year with a player option or a team option for this and to prove it. But at the same time, if I'm an offensive player, I'm looking at your team and I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Defensively, I love if I'm a defensive player and I'm, going and I'm like, okay, I like what they're doing.
Yeah.
If I'm a cornerback, I'm like, okay,
yeah.
I'll look good if I'm opposite Diggs, and everything. But are they going to show me the money? If I'm going to get the same money somewhere else, or
that's
just a little bit more, that's closer. I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think they got to stop being. The sad thing is that they're being cheap with free agents, but they're overspending on their own players.
Yeah.
You've said it before. They love their guys.
That's what they love.
Anybody they draft, they overpay.
Yeah. I mean, other than Randy Gregory, they paid Dorrance Armstrong, who played behind him. They're going to pay Terrence Steele. They're repaying Van Der Esch for being a huge liability.
Right.
They repaid Gallup and they repaid Zeke, but they're not going to repay Amari Cooper because they didn't draft him. They only re-signed their guys. That's why they didn't bring back Malik Hooker. It's not their guy.
Has it lost its luster? No.
To the media, but what about to the players?
Right, to the players. I mean, I think Joey said it best. If I'm going to get a 5-year deal from the Cowboys, or I'm going to get a 5-year deal from the Rams or the Bucks,
yeah,
and I've got, a team that's been to the Super Bowl and just close to the championship game. Oh, it was the championship game, Bucks, right?
Yeah.
They went to the NFC Championship game. That was the NFC Championship game.
I thought they.
No,
I can't remember. No, they lost in the divisional round.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm picking the other team.
Yeah.
Also because I look at it as what you looked at. You're going to get criticized always.
Yeah.
No matter what. Like, you could have 10 tackles, a sack, but you give up, you get run over on the last play of the game and it's a touchdown. You had a horrible game and you're a joke. And, so I think that might play into it too. Yep. But, I mean, it's an interesting question, but I just think Jerry Jones is playing a game that he's no longer winning.
Yeah.
And back in the day, even 10 years ago, he was winning.
Yeah.
And he's not anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that, some of the players I want to mention on the free agent list, I think would be smart for Dallas to go after and bring in, even though they're older. Like, a lot of the players on this list are really old. But
Dallas has the second most cap space right now. And nothing, like, I'm almost wondering if they're waiting for that first wave to be over. Now some training stuff's starting to start. If they're waiting to see, okay, well, no one scooped up this guy. No one's traded for Tyrann Mathieu yet. And I'm like, but that's what, like, does that work? I feel like a lot of teams do that and it doesn't work.
But you're not going to go after the Honey Badger.
No,
because you already have two safeties.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring him in. But at the same time, why aren't you bringing in a Gilmore to see how much he wants? Why aren't you bringing in, your center? He's a decent center?
No. Center is one of their biggest needs.
Why aren't you bringing in Treader? You know what I mean? Like,
Dallas loves their guys.
And like I asked you before. Treader, JC Treader is I think PFF top 2 centers in the league.
Yeah. And
he basically blocked for the best 2 running backs in the league. Like, I mean, why hasn't he been picked up yet? Like, and I'm looking at him. So I'll give you my top 5, which is, the Honey Badger's 1, Gilmore's number 2. I am going to go with a surprising one that I don't think you guys will think of, but I'm going with J.C. Treader. I'm going with, Eric Fisher's an interesting name. Hasn't really lived up to the hype.
No. 2 years he was really good,
but I'm going with, a couple guys here that, Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
Running back. I bring him. He did not, like, he shared the backfield, but he was the better back in Denver last year.
Yeah, he was.
And I look at Sheldon Richardson. Those are my top 5.
I love Sheldon Richardson.
And I'm like, okay, and then you can keep going. I mean, there's, Larry. I can never get his name right. Ogunjobi. He's coming off a Achilles thing late in the playoffs, so he's not going to be healthy to start the season. He failed his physical for the Bears. He already told the Bengals I'm not signing a 1-year team-friendly deal. No.
Yeah.
So he's out there. He's good when he flashes, but he also is bad when he's bad. Like, it's
Eli
weird.
Apple.
But Dante Hightower, to me, is somebody that could go in and teach young kids.
Mm-hmm.
For me as a Bengals fan, my linebackers are young as all what. Good, not great, good. But somebody like Hightower could come in and teach them.
Yeah.
And play half the game.
Yeah.
But teach them. Something like that. Like, you're looking at Joe Hayden. What Joe Hayden knows, is he Joe Hayden of 5 years ago, 4 years ago? No. But the knowledge, and if you have a young team, that knowledge is almost like a necessity.
I don't see where a Joe Hayden or a Gilmore for Dallas for a veteran's minimum or a prove it kind of deal, it wouldn't absolutely bolster the second side of that outside cornerback area. Like that's kind of my thing. So that was Mark's 5. Do you have a few players, Joey?
Yeah, I have, similar to what Mark said, Honey Badger's number 1. I threw Odell in there. I mean, coming off an injury that hurts, but he turned it on when he went to the Rams. I think he still has some left in the tank. He could be a good player for somebody.
Do you think he has a full season?
That's the thing. I mean, I don't know if he can at this point in his career. He hasn't been able to.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can bank on him giving you, I don't know, 8 or 9 games, you can live with that, I guess. But if you're a playoff team, you want him there in the playoffs. So that 8 or 9 is not going to be enough for you.
It'll be a midseason hire potentially too.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? You got?
Clowney's another
Oh,
guy.
I forgot about Clowney.
I like Melvin Ingram. I think he's a solid D-end who's kind of just bounced around since I guess he was from the Chargers and then he went to Pittsburgh.
Yep, he played on the Chargers.
Pittsburgh, and then he finished the season last year after signing with Pittsburgh. He finished with the Chiefs.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's right. He was with the Chiefs at the end. Yeah, I think he's a really solid complement to a team who might already have a number 1 guy like a Bosa or something. He could solidify that other side. And then I really like Jarvis Landry. I think he's going to be a really good pickup for somebody.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thing with everybody you both mentioned. I don't really have to go into anybody. There were some players deeper that obviously playing a lot of like video game stuff, there's a lot of names I saw that I'm like, okay, I remember seeing that name as like a backup kind of player on TV, but like these are bolstering players where they don't start normally, but they're going to be backups that if your starter gets hurt, you're really glad you got that backup and not a 7th round rookie backing up. Does that make sense? So like, I don't even mind if it costs $5 million to bring in both corner Joe Hayden and Patriots guy. I just forgot his name. Gilmore. I keep wanting to say McCourty. That's not right. But Gilmore. I know, a little off there. But like bringing both them in for $5 million, then you bring in Ojanobi for another $5 to $10 million. Like you still have 10 left, and you just helped your defense tremendously. You bring in a Treader. You bring in all 4 of them. You're back into the top 10 winning free agency. But because you don't make any of these moves, that's what's happening. And so like a lot of teams, like the Eagles are kind of just sitting around wondering, DC is another one, wondering if these NFC East teams are part of this conversation we're having, waiting for that first wave to be over, which is usually in about a week from now. Like you'll see 1 player a day right now. I mean, there's a lot per day, but we're talking like 3rd string running. You don't hear about these moves.
Right.
But in about a week or so, you're going to start hearing about these top names falling. You're going to start seeing some trades happening that are small. And that's kind of my thing. It's like, you have the 15 teams that went nuts day 1 and 2. Now they're quiet. And I'm wondering if you're going to get these names that you and Joey just named off, you're going to start seeing them drop because they realized, they said, hey, Seattle, I want $40 million a year. And they're like, no. So now they're sitting at home saying, agent, can you just get me whatever? And that's what's going to happen.
I think there's players, and I think Wagner probably did it the best. Okay, I'm in Dallas.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm in Baltimore. Yep. Now I'm in LA. Now I'm back in Dallas. Now I'm back in the, and I think it was a little bit of a bidding war.
Yep.
And Dallas and the Ravens,
Miller, same thing.
Said, no, we're not doing any of that.
Von Miller was in Dallas, Buffalo, and the Rams as well, I believe.
Yep. So I have a quick question. I don't know where we are on time, but I definitely want to talk to Joey about the Eagles. But I have 3 players I want you guys to rank. He named one of them in his top, so I'm going to assume he's number 1 for Joey. But Jarvis Landry, Will Fuller, Julio Jones.
Go ahead, Joey.
Rank them in order of
what you think. Yeah, like who? Like in order of, who's the best remaining free agent right now?
Okay, and that was Landry, Jones, and who else? I'm sorry.
Will Fuller.
Will Fuller. Okay. If Fuller's healthy, he's number 1, but if he's not, he's number 3. So I would probably go, based on reliability, I'd go Landry. I want to say Landry, Fuller, and then Julio.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my list would be very similar. Right now, I'm going to take it from my team's perspective, a team that still wants possible opposite because they know Gallup's going to be 4 weeks out still starting the beginning of the year. So they know that, and then slow. So we're talking James Washington and CeeDee Lamb. So if they make a move, I would prefer Jarvis Landry, 1, in my opinion. 2 suspensions and 2 major injuries for Will Fuller so far. Not really my cup of tea. I'd love to see a Julio opposite of a CD, or even when Gallup comes back, you have that Y kind of position. I think Julio would be my 2, and I'd put Will Fuller as my 3. However, if we're talking like joking way, injuries off kind of thing, Will Fuller would be my top choice for sure. But you just can't, if you're going into free agency and you want to make a run, you can't if we're talking the equal contract for all three, which is they're all going to be probably close to the same range, 1 year, prove it kind of thing, I'm afraid Will Fuller is going to get suspended in the first 4 weeks. That's my concern.
Okay. I think Fuller's one simply because of his age.
Yeah.
I think Jarvis and Julio fell off the cliff. I think the age cliff and the amount of volume cliff that they had, I think it finally caught up to them. And Jarvis is small, and he needs to do that dirty work. Yeah. And I don't think his body's built for that. And I just don't think Julio has that giddy up anymore.
My only thing about Jarvis real quick is I think it almost, when it comes to certain teams, you almost wonder if they've been undervalued, kind of like Tannehill was with Miami, and then he was revitalized in the Tennessee Titans. So I'm wondering if Landry still has something left and just needs to prove it without Baker Mayfield, a quarterback not named Baker Mayfield. Does that make sense? Like I know you guys have talent, but like put him with Burrow or have him have a 1-year deal with Herbert or a 1-year deal with another quarterback who can actually sling the ball. I think you could see he could still probably be a very viable wide receiver. Okay. That's my thing. I think the Browns ruin players not named running backs. That's my, especially wide receiver wise.
All right. So just neither one of you a believer that Julio has anything left?
Go ahead, Joey.
Can you repeat that? It kind of cut out.
You're good. Are we believers that Julio doesn't really have anything left?
I mean, I thought he was going to give Tennessee so much, but he just didn't. He's 33. I think he's fallen off. I think he might have a year or two where he can contribute, but the best of Julio's done.
So how about I give this scenario? Mark, you're obviously out on this scenario because you're the Bengals, because you don't have to be in on. You have wide receivers. Let's use the Eagles here, for example. Let's say with your first-round pick, one of them, you take Burks from Arkansas or you take Olav from Ohio State, one of these top 3 wide receivers they're talking about. Would you sign a 1-year, $1.8 million veteran deal for Julio?
Oh, absolutely.
So
I would do it.
I think he still has some viability, but I definitely don't want him as my number 1 or 2. But I think his veteran leadership is, again, one of those things like bringing in Gilmore to work with Diggs. Diggs is better than Gilmore right now, right? But the leadership is there, and I don't get the same leadership out of Fuller and out of Jarvis. So I think any team that takes a shot at Julio, you're banking on him saying, hey, CD, let's talk. Hey, Rager, let's talk. Hey, Devontae Smith, let's talk. You know what I mean? And I think it just depends on a lot of these players like Julio. I think it's going to absolutely come down to what happens after the draft.
Yeah, that makes a lot. I agree for sure. I think it would be best for him to be signed after the draft.
Yeah, because I don't think there's a lot of teams calling his agent right now saying, we got to have you, man. What will it take? I think people are going, we'd like to bring him in, but again, we already have, most teams have a 1 and a 2. Most teams do. I mean, Dallas has a 1 and a 2 when Gallup's healthy, right? But like right now they don't. So is that an option? Eagles, they have a 1. Is Rager like a 4 or a 3? Like, I'm not being mean there. Like, maybe they need that number 2, but I think you can get that in the draft. You have 3 first-round picks. So I just don't think there's a lot of fitting places for him right now till after you see what the Eagles do with 3 first-round picks, what you see the Texans do with multiple picks in the draft. A lot of these teams that need wide receivers have a lot of first, second-round picks right now.
Mm-hmm. And it's a deep wide receiver class.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I will say that.
Very deep.
Now, so my question, and I've been dying to ask this to Eagles fans. I know it's funny because every time I go to church on Sunday, I'm dying to pull Pastor Sam aside and ask him this question. But I feel it's inappropriate right after he gives a sermon to ask him this question. But where are you on Jalen Hurts?
That is a question that I feel like you could get 5 different answers from the city of Philadelphia, because they're the people who – it was the whole thing with Carson Wentz and Nick Foles all over again, where the city was ready to get Carson out of Philly, and they're like, all right, let's get Jalen going. Then Jalen starts going. The Eagles lose, get pretty blown out by the Bucs in the playoffs. They're like, all right, Jalen's not the guy. Let's bring in the next guy. Let's go get Rodgers. Let's go get Wilson. For me personally, I'm glad we didn't. In hindsight, it's 2020, but I'm glad we didn't get one of those guys. I want to give Jalen another shot. I'm all in on him for this year, and I hope for the long run. I think he has the potential to be a franchise guy, kind of like a Dak. He's not going to be a top 5 quarterback in the league necessarily, because Hurts has accuracy issues. He has issues reading the field. He misses open guys once in a while, but he has that ability to extend the play with his legs. He has the ability to hit the guy down the field when they're open. But yeah, I'm in on Hurts. I'm excited that they kept him. I hope they do not draft a quarterback. I think there's 0% chance they do in the first round, but in the second or third, I wouldn't put it past Howie, since he is in love with drafting quarterbacks. But yeah, I'm in on Hurts. At least give him another year with a solidified offense.
So I know Mark has something pulled up on his phone. If I think I know what it is, he'll say it in a second. But what I wanted to ask was, the reason why I agree with you is we're hard on Philly, but I think Jalen Hurts, the issue is for the last 2 years. Last year and the year before, without Devontae Smith. Well, now with Devontae Smith, you make the playoffs, right? But before you had Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts, you were throwing to a backup quarterback as your wide receiver. They didn't really have good offensive line help. You had really old, aging linemen like Dallas is getting. You had a running back who was injured half the year, and you have very big, old holes on defense with young players and other holes. You literally have a Jekyll and Hyde on every position group. Like, you have an old tight end with a super young tight end, right? So this is my thing, is I think with these 3 first-round picks, if you can use one for an offensive lineman, you can use one for a top wide receiver, and you have Smith, and then you have Goddard, who's one of my favorite tight ends in the league, and then you get one of these top wide receivers, and you have a decent running back depth. I think Philly can make a move. I think they can. That's why I'm glad and hope they stick with him for 1 more year, finish out his rookie contract. I think he has 2 more years, because I just think that if you would have given the farm up for these quarterbacks, what would they have thrown to? Just Devontae Smith? Like, you need more than that. So Mark is probably going to read this in a second.
Well, my thing is this: this is the first time. Like, he may not have listened to the backlog of our shows and
like a year
and
ago.
everything, but I have a philosophy that I love fantasy football. I'm in different leagues every year, but I feel fantasy football has ruined how people view their talent on their teams. Meaning, Jalen Hurts isn't a fantasy football quarterback.
Yeah.
But he wins.
Yeah.
Okay. I look at that. Like, he made the playoffs starting for a full season. Mm-hmm. Okay. On a team that had no business making the playoffs. The coach coached his ass off, got all these players to buy in and everything, and Hurts did his job. Now, the problem I have with Hurts is the same problem I have with Lamar Jackson. When it's crunch time, when it's game time, that ball sails, and you're not accurate. He has a pretty deep ball. But it's not 100%.
He's got to groom it like Josh Allen did.
Yep, he has a hard time hitting outside the numbers and doing that. But I have this thing, and our friend Logan put this in there, QB1 or QB2, and he gave us these stats. These stats are identical. I'm gonna tell you that. One QB was 4,120 yards, 26 TDs, 12 turnovers, and 213 first downs in their first 15 starts. The second QB was 4,115 yards, 29 TDs, 11 turnovers, and 209 first downs. Identical for 15 starts. Like, you can't get much more identical than that. One's Lamar and one's Jalen. The difference is Lamar won an MVP and has won 1 playoff game.
Yeah.
Okay? And they missed the playoffs. You get into the playoffs having no business making the playoffs. And I will say that, like, you're way ahead of schedule, I feel. I don't know if, Joey, you agree or disagree. Way ahead of schedule to make the playoffs. So now the expectations are ratcheted up for you, because you need to, especially with the way the NFC has declined in talent.
Yeah.
I feel Jalen Hurts, this is his year. If he can make it to the playoffs again and or win the division, I don't see why you don't just stay with him. Like, I
agree.
I don't understand why winning all of a sudden isn't enough. And like he said, he's going to give them 2022. If you make the playoffs and lose in the first round again, are you done as a fan?
That's the question. I mean, that's tough. I think the fans want to win in the playoffs, and most of the fans are going to be like, if he has another stinker in the playoffs, that's what he is. He's a guy who can get you there, but no further, and they're going to give up on him. Is that going to be fair or not? I mean, I feel like we'd have to see how the season plays out to determine that. But yeah, I mean, those stats there are so many stats I saw comparing Jalen Hurts' first full season played to guys like Lamar or other guys like that, and he's right there with them. I mean, he's done a great job. That I didn't expect the Eagles to make the playoffs last year. They weren't supposed to. No one expected them to. They were in a rebuild. They've said they're rebuilding, but they proved that you can win and rebuild at the same time, which is not usually how it's done.
The Bengals, same thing. Middle of a rebuild, you make the playoffs, and now the expectations are there. But something that Christian said, where's your first pick? What number's your first pick?
I think all three. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. I think it's like 15, 16, and 19.
Yeah, they're all in the 15s to 20. They're all three in the same spot.
Okay, so out of these players, because you're big into college, I don't know if Joey is, but
I think he is.
I'm going to read these names for you. Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jamison Williams, and Chris Olave. Are any of them going to be there?
There has to be. There has to be at least one of them there. Not all of the – I mean, there's 14 picks before we have one. Not all those receivers are going to be off the board by then, I don't think.
I would put Burks in there, too. Burks is another one that's a first-rounder.
Well, Burks was right under. The only reason why I named those three is because of top-ranked rookie coming out of college wide receivers. All four of those are over 90 ranked, which – I'm going based off of what I saw last year and the year before, where Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase were in the 93 to 95 range like Wilson is. So do you package one first-round pick and a second or third-round pick to move up to get the best wide receiver in the draft? Or are you happy with one of those four to pair with Smith?
I would stay. I would stay at 15 because I'm looking at a couple mocks right now, and I see Drake London at 11, and I think he's the consensus number one receiver possibly. Garrett Wilson in Ohio State is right above him in this mock as well, so they're probably the top two. Mm-hmm. But I think Jamison Williams. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is he the one who tore his ACL?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So he probably would have been the consensus number one had he not torn his ACL.
And he still might fall to a second to an end of the first day pick, second day pick. There's a chance in that.
Right. So I like our chances taking him maybe with our third pick in the first round. If we want to retake him in the first round, maybe he'll be available in the second. I don't know. But I would stay. I would stay at 15.
All right. That's smart. Like, I just look at these guys and I feel like sometimes the Bengals might have ruined what teams might think is the smart thing to do. Me personally, I've always said you build the front and you work your way out. Where the Bengals decided to start out and now they're building in. But I feel like it does, and I'm not familiar with your offensive line or your defensive line or your secondary or anything. I know you have one of the best. I know Slay's still there, he's one of the best cornerbacks in the game. But are you thinking, do you need offensive line, or is your offensive line solid, or do you need that piece where you're spending a first-round pick on an offensive lineman or defensive lineman?
So I would say for 2022, the line on both sides of the ball is solid. But the Eagles brought back Jason Kelsey on a one-year deal, so he's going to be at center. But that's the hole that's going to be there when Kelsey leaves, most likely after next season.
Okay.
We have Landon Dickerson. In college he was a center for Bama, I think.
Yep.
but he's playing left guard for us because Kelsey's still at center. I think he might slide over to center, and then we'll need to fill in a guard position. We have Jordan Mailata, left tackle. He's just signed I think a 5-year extension. He was a 7th round pick, rugby player, who's now become I'd say he's a top 10 left tackle in the league. He's going to be there. Lane Johnson's still at right tackle. He'll probably be there another couple years.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's a need for a guard in the first round this year. On defense, we brought in Hassan Reddick. I think he's going to play mainly edge rusher. We have Cox. We have who's our Hargrave. Hargrave is our other deep tackle. Still have Brandon Graham for another year. So yeah, we have veterans on both sides that are going to be here another year or two, but there's going to be holes there later on. But for this year, I wouldn't take one first round.
Okay, so what's your dream scenario? Like, you're the GM of the Eagles right now. Your first 3 picks, what positions? Wide receiver. What are you doing with your next 2?
So next 2, my dream scenario would be they would be able to somehow get Sauce Gardner as a corner, but I don't think he's going to be there unless we somehow trade up to like the top.
He's a monster.
6. I think he's right now. I see him going 7 to the Giants, maybe.
Okay.
So that would be a dream scenario to get him. If you can't get him, I don't think there's any other corners that I want in the first round. I would go linebacker. I want either Devin Lloyd or the Georgia. What's his name?
Is that Hasselwood?
No,
that's the wide receiver.
So there's Jordan Davis, the monster defensive lineman. I'd love to get him, maybe.
That's what I'm thinking
and then, who is that linebacker?
I can't think of who it is right now. I'm looking right at him. I just can't remember his name.
All right, here's Devin Lloyd. Nakobe Dean, that's it.
Okay. Yep, Nakobe.
All off season, I've been saying Nakobe Dean. If we get him, I'll be happy. So I would love to get Nakobe Dean. So that's linebacker, maybe D-line, and wide receiver. That's my dream scenario.
Okay.
I think that's a solid scenario, yeah.
All right.
Excuse me.
I mean, I just feel like, I don't know why, like, because I talk to people and, like, you just hear it, like, from Philly, get rid of Hurts. Get rid of Hurts. I'm like, why? Like, I don't understand it. I understand why you got rid of Wentz, and you really fleeced the Colts on Wentz. You took the dead money. Like, you ate that dead money, but at the same time, you got away from that contract, and you already had that piece in place. Now, do I think you can win a Super Bowl with him? No. Do I think you can build a team, and then once you have that team built, get a up-and-coming college quarterback to come in and take that team to where it needs to go? Yes. And or a free agent, because once you have those, pieces in place, it's a free agent place where you want to go to play with those pieces. But I look at the Eagles, and if they don't miss on this draft,
which they have a tendency to miss on drafts, last few.
Yes, they do.
I look at them as contenders in the East.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Dallas takes a huge step back, but I think if they take 1 or 2 steps back and the Eagles take 1 or 2 steps forward, it's a tight battle the rest of the way. I do think Washington has gotten better. Let's not talk about the Giants because I think the Giants are good defensively, but still offensively, I don't think they have a chance.
They have a wet booty quarterback. That's why.
But
they haven't improved at all on offense.
But 2 years ago, if you said that the Eagles and the Cowboys were going to be in a race, a race for the division,
the Giants,
you would have been laughed at. I would have laughed at you because I called them a dumpster fire. I called the Eagles a dumpster fire.
Yeah, and they were.
But I just look at the coach was the right hire. Let's hope that he can continue progressing and get better. I think that the Smith signing drafting Smith was the smart thing to do. Yes, Waddle was there. Yes, this. Yes, that. But
I love Devontae Smith.
Smith was there, and you took him, and he didn't bust.
No.
He's a solid guy. Getting rid of Ertz and getting a draft pick for him was smart because Goddard is the better tight end at this point in their careers. You need that second wide receiver. You need that third wide receiver. Miles Sanders is probably one of the most underrated running backs in the league. You make it so he's not the first option where teams are loading the box. This team, he's going to do what he did in the second half of the season last year, which was very good. Mm-hmm. I just don't understand. And I know Philly. You're from Philly, correct?
Yeah, I'm from the suburbs of Philly.
Okay.
Just outside.
That fan base, I'm from Massachusetts, and that fan base makes Boston fans, New England fans look silly. Philly fans, and I hope you don't take offense to this because I don't know who you are, but Philly fans are so ridiculous, over the top, quick. It's like, we signed Bryce Harper. Yes, Bryce Harper sucks. We're not going anywhere. And it's like, okay, and, Carson Wentz almost won the MVP. We're awesome. Carson Wentz sucks. Get him out of here. It's like, in the classic,
A.D.D.
you booed Santa Claus. I mean, you're so passionate, but it's like you had for a team that's only won one Super Bowl.
And it wasn't that long ago. Let's
and
be clear.
been to a few Super Bowls. It's like you expect a Super Bowl, you expect a championship every year, and I just feel bad for Jalen Hurts. I really do, because this kid, for all he's done, I mean, he took a ragged, good team to the playoffs. Yeah, you got destroyed, but if you compared the Bucks to the Eagles, on paper, everybody knew you were going to get destroyed. Everybody knew you weren't ready. But yet he got no credit for getting you there.
Yeah.
And it's just it's funny to me. So I hope you don't take offense to the fact that I said that about Philly fans, but they're so passionate, but at the same time so angry when you don't win.
Well, of course I take offense to it. We're Philly fans. We take offense to everything.
I'm looking forward to this season in football because, one, the AFC is so stacked and has just all the talent seems to have gone to the AFC. Mm-hmm. And then you have the NFC where you have these teams that you can look at and say, they can take advantage of this. And Philly is one of those teams. And if you look at the landscape of the NFC, Green Bay with Rodgers is probably going to be there. The Bucks are going to be there, but they're old. I feel Minnesota, that's a team we didn't mention in free agency winners. I do feel they should be mentioned. They're going to be there. The Rams are going to be there. You have no idea who's playing quarterback in San Francisco. Drew Lock is a dud.
No, man, they got Geno.
Seattle's not there, but Kyler Murray only plays a half a season.
Yep.
And it's sort of like this is the time where a team can come out of nowhere. And if you build them right and you win on this draft, you really can be in the running for a top 4 seed.
Yeah, the Eagles surprisingly are in that conversation where if they hit this just right and Dallas takes that step back like I project they will, they have the opportunity to run this. If Dallas comes out at the beginning of the season with the same mindset of we have the best wide receiver core and we're going to throw it. Sorry, I'm a Dak fan. He's not a 400-yard passer a game. He's not that kind of quarterback. Mm-hmm. You should be running 65% of the time like you did with Zeke and Murray. Like when you had DeMarco Murray, what happened to that offense? Because we own time of possession. Yeah. But if they come out throwing the ball 80% of the time with Kellen Moore, the Eagles are going to win this division.
Okay, so last question, because I know we're running a little long.
We're actually right almost at an hour, so go ahead.
So my last question for both of you. Now, Joey, you'll learn. This is a Washington... Our podcast listeners are Washington fans.
Most of them.
They're the Washington Commanders. They bleed it. My question to both of you is since I mentioned that team in the NFC where they can take advantage of this like the Eagles are, being NFC East teams fans, are you worried about Washington at all?
I'll let Joe go first.
I'm worried that the Eagles are going to lose to Washington in Philly to Carson Wentz, because that's just going to cause the city to go up in flames.
You guys gonna crawl up light poles again?
They'll grease the poles beforehand like they did for the Super Bowl parade. Yeah, I mean, I am afraid. I think I'm one of the fans who was a big Carson Wentz supporter. I didn't want them to let him go. I didn't blame their struggles on him. I blamed it on the fact that 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen were injured, and he had nobody to throw to. And you saw that a little bit last year where Hurts finally had a guy, Devontae Smith, to throw to. So I won't go back down that rabbit hole. But I was in on Carson Wentz. I wasn't ready to boot him out of town. I think he's a game manager who, if he stops making some of the stupid decisions that he makes, he's a quarterback that can lead you to win the division. I mean, he was the leading candidate for MVP in 2017 before he had his knee injury. I am a little bit worried about it, the Washington, but I don't think they have enough around him to be that successful.
So for me, I'll make it quick. I don't want to say I'm not worried. I would say I'm watching. Okay, I'm not worried about the Giants. I'm watching DC. I think DC has a potential chance to finish around the same. To me, I've been hard on Carson Wentz. He had those 2 or 3 good years in Washington, in Philly, but Wentz is what Wentz is. He's Carson Wentz, okay? He has 2 major injuries. He's not the same quarterback he was, and even with the Colts, they ran a running back who had 1,600 yards. Mm-hmm. It wasn't Carson Wentz. Now, that's not a hateful thing, just like with Jimmy Garoppolo. It wasn't Jimmy Garoppolo. He made good decisions, and Carson Wentz didn't make bad decisions, right? He's a decent quarterback. But the problem is they still have 1 good wide receiver. They have a good running back in DC, but they have an overrated defense. I still think they're overrated. I mean, in last year, in the first 15 games of both their careers, Micah Parsons' stats are better than Chase Young's. Their defense led a lot of yards up last year. Did DC get better by adding Carson Wentz? Well, they took on that contract, and now they have no money to spend. I don't think DC got better, and I think Dallas stayed the same, but I think Eagles are making strides to be better, and they can in the draft. Now, I don't know what DC is going to do, but I still project Dallas and Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to move closer in this race, and I think both teams are going to be right around Dallas at 12 wins. But I see Dallas being right around 10 right now. And I see the Eagles being 9 and 10, literally right next to each other. Boom, boom. And then I see DC right there and the Giants still at the bottom. But that doesn't mean DC can't make that run. I just don't see it. Okay. I'm just not that person yet. But I'm watching. I'm keeping an eye on him, but I'm not going to say that yet.
Okay. All right. For that, I would just like to say, Joey, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. I will love to have you on again, especially after the draft, to see what the Eagles did. So. Yeah. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it, and I do look forward to meeting you in the future.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I'll be happy to join you guys whenever you'll have me. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
All right, buddy. Thanks. See ya. All right, guys. Well, that was Joey, a new friend of mine. We just met recently. We've been doing a lot of stuff together through our church, so we've had a lot of time in the car rides because gas got expensive, so we've been carpooling and just realized that he's a huge Philly fan out of nowhere. I was like, this dude bleeds blue and green and silver, whatever their colors are. It's not blue.
They're green.
They're green. Yeah, yes. I'm kind of colorblind. But this dude's a huge Philly fan, and I was like, we've always talked about getting one, and now we have one. Yeah. So other than that, Mark?
Yeah, well, have a good week, everybody. Next week, we might have Nate or Logan on. Yep. We're trying to get our schedules coordinated. As of right now, I'm unemployed, so my schedule's wide open next week, so we'll see what we got going on. But thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Have a great weekend, guys.